Join spiritual feminist and empowerment coach Joni Advent Maher for Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow. Listen in for intimate conversations about money, transformation, and feminine sovereignty. And now, your host, Joni Advent Maher.
This episode brought to you by The Iconic Coach, for coaches, leaders, artists, and entrepreneurs ready to embrace their iconic traits and up-level their lives and businesses. For details, go to theiconiccoach.com. Welcome to Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow. I'm your host, Joni Advent Maher, spiritual midwife and transformational guide, and I am honored and delighted to welcome Katie Pelkey, the Iconic Coach, to the podcast today. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Joni. So happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you with us. Let me tell our listeners a little bit more about you. So Katie is a woman's transformational life coach for the rebellious soul insistent on thriving. Her company, The Iconic Coach, provides coaching and resources for those who live a life uninhibited. Katie has a gift which allows her to clearly see the potential and the purpose of others. Her mastery is in her coaching, which awakens her clients' awareness and supports them in becoming iconic through discovering their own higher self. Her dynamic methods and open demeanor encourage the coaches, artists, and leaders she works with to reclaim their inner wisdom, own their worth, master their gifts, unearth their dormant powers, and be iconic. So, Katie, I want to hear about that word. I want to hear about iconic and what that means to you and how you work with clients around that.
So that word, which when it first came to me, it kept coming in meditations. And I was drawn to it, probably to the same degree that I also resisted it at first, which became this inquiry of, yes, what does this mean? Why do I feel an attraction? And a little bit just like, don't let me touch that. I don't want to play with that right now. And what it became as I started, I'm a big, I Google a word or I look it up the second I hear it. And I'm like, what does it really mean? And a few definitions I loved, or probably my favorite one, was to be a symbol for something you stand for. I believe it was a symbol of excellence for something you stand for. And I was thinking of the ones that I would call iconic, the people in my life that they truly stand for something, and I know what that is. And because of that, I follow them. So I think of my teachers or the guides that have come into my life, and they taught me something. There was some potent lesson. And because of that, I'll never forget them. And I would say there was consistency in their message and how they touched everyone else to a degree. And when I look at those even bigger figures, when you look at more religious figures or goddesses or even fictional characters, they stand for something. And so this word iconic became a verb. It became to be iconic. It's really tapping into who you are, who you really are. So this is where I bring in that higher self. And how do you share it with the world? How do you express it boldly, radically, and leave an impact that changes the ones around you?
Yes, that is, there is so much potency in that. And I also feel tremendous resonance with, I often use the word sovereignty, and certainly we talk about leadership, but iconic brings in this whole other dimension, this whole other aspect that feels really important. And I know that one of the things that you are particularly gifted at is helping women, or actually, I just want to clarify. Do you work with both men and women, or do you work primarily with women?
I do work primarily with women, but I have coached many men that are open to tapping into their female qualities as well as their masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I work in a very strong feminine energy,
mm-hmm.
and reclaiming what that is. And the gender of the person isn't as important as much as the openness to that type of material is.
Yes, I understand that. So what I was going to say was that I know, because you and I have had a conversation prior to this, that one of your gifts is really bringing forth what has been, I would use the word suppressed or repressed, that is like an untapped resource. Can you speak about that or say more about that?
Yes. So the resources that we have within, the qualities that we have within that make up our higher self, a lot of them go unknown or unembodied because of usually our very early years. So a quick example would be, I'll use my own experience. As a young child, I was very interested in sexuality, but I didn't totally understand why. I loved the idea of sexiness, if you will. I loved the dancing. I loved the clothes. I grew up in a generation where there was a lot of that going on and a lot of repression towards it. So you could see it, but if you expressed it, in my experience, I was deeply shamed for it. And so to dim myself down, to play it safe, to not rock the boat, and I was one to rock the boat no matter what. So I did all I could to really how do I really hunker down so I'm safe, so I don't cause too much trouble, so I'm liked and appreciated. I cut this part of myself off to a degree. Now, I'm not the most extreme case, but for the power sexuality actually gives me, it was very cut off. I was very cut off from my life support. I wouldn't allow myself to dress the way I wanted to. I wouldn't speak the way I wanted to. I spoke more in my head versus where in my natural state, I speak in my lower chakras. I speak in a sexual way. And I was so ashamed of this for so long because of what others told me it meant. And through doing work in feminine qualities and discovering my higher self, so who I really am without fear, who I am if I'm not worried about who's judging me, I'm not worried about how others are going to perceive me. If I'm just myself doing what it is I love, what does that look like? And there's a massive sexual energy in me that gets expressed for myself. And that's what I started rediscovering as I tapped into this energy that was a lot of dancing and movement and speaking and singing in different ways. I got this energy back. And I felt so much more alive. And I started healing the parts of me that were so almost embarrassed by even expressing this alone in my room, let alone now sharing it with the world. That iconic part becomes, all right, now that I'm doing this practice that's giving me life force, is there a bigger area that this needs to be shared? So I'm starting to see, with my friends or my clients, they're also repressed in this place. So I started having conversations with them. And now life's calling me to really walk my talk. And yes, to put out those meditations that's talking about sexual energy, to wear what I really want to, no matter what I'm doing. And it does get contrast. It does get, those looks are judgments. But because I now have this energy from reclaiming this repressed quality that's so near and dear to who I really am, it's like I didn't have life before this. There's so much energy and sustenance that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what others think or what, the focus isn't there anymore. And there's such liberation in that inhibition and just being able to let it all out. Did that all make sense? Did that cover?
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
It makes perfect sense. I certainly can relate to being cut off from that most kind of vital aspect of your potency, because for me it was my mysticism and having to disconnect from that as a young girl because it was threatening to the people around me. And so I completely understand it, and I'm quite sure that those women that are listening have had their own version, whether it was their sexuality or some other aspect or their liveliness, the whole kind of piece around not getting too big for your britches or too full of yourself. Certainly many of us have experienced some version of that. So that tamping down and that cutting off, and it sounds like your work is really designed to both activate that and bring it and integrate it into a person's experience and into their, whether it's leadership or coaching or work.
Yes. Yeah, because what I found, and a tool that I'd be happy to offer anyone listening, is what I call the iconic archetypes. So it's very similar to if you've ever played with, the goddess archetypes or there's so many different ways of looking at this. But what came to me in meditation when I was studying a lot of the divine feminine energy was, what are the main archetypes? What are the main personalities that are our cities, our gifts, our powers when we tap into the feminine? And what ones out of these 7 am I really connected to? And what ones do I feel so repulsed by, so disconnected to? Just like the iconic. And when we allow ourselves to be, I put together a meditation and just this experience to be with it, to experience yourself as every single one, because we have access to every single feminine quality that exists. We can just tap into it. But again, it's usually that one that's the most repressed, that's that essential part of who you really are. So I'm happy to share that because it's a useful tool to listen to your body, to trust kind of your gut response and your reaction. Like, ooh, that one feels off. And then we dive in there. Because what I help my clients do is, once we find that place where they're really resisting something, then we have to heal. Then it becomes this process of, okay, what are the traumatic experiences that occurred that need to be re-witnessed and need to be held? What are the fears that we need to hold and understand so they're no longer in control of your life?
So is that a meditation they can access through your website? Is that what you're suggesting? Or is it something you would take us through now? Or what? Help me.
Oh, would you like to? We could do one now if you'd like to.
It's up to you. I'm going to leave it up to you. I don't know how extended of a process it is. If you would love to, we could get a taste now. And then if women wanted to check out the more extended, how would that sound? The more extended.
That sounds, I would love to do a sample meditation on the archetype. And then Joni, if you'd be open to sharing your experience, I'd love to hear what you feel from it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay. So wherever you are, finding yourself grounding in. If you're driving, if you're sitting, it's okay. The eyes can stay open, but if it's safe, close the eyes and start to deepen the breath. As you breathe deep into the belly, the ribs, the chest, feel yourself filling up with life force, prana. And as you exhale, let everything soften, letting go of any resistance, judgments, expectations. Just be here and now. Breathe in one more time, nice and deep, really filling up, letting the chest, the heart, the shoulders rise, everything expands. And exhale, soften, letting the breath come to a natural ebb and flow. And bringing the hands to the heart if that's available to you. Feeling the pulsations of the heart, the body. And if the eyes are closed, you can actually look down and connect even deeper into your heart, into your wisdom. And we'll call upon your higher self, who you are without fear, your essence, your soul, your truth. she will give you access to all of these archetypes, all of these energies, and she will show you the one that is most needed to embody. You can trust this process, and you can't do it wrong. So continue to breathe deep and come into a time when you felt completely alive. Let the heart recall a memory where you felt free, where you felt this is what life is all about. Allow the colors, the smells, the scents to fill the mind. Feel the emotions of that moment and let it take over your body as if they were happening right now. With each breath, let this experience get stronger. And again, just notice, who was I being in this moment? Were you alone? Were you with others? What elements were present in the situation that allowed you to feel so connected to your truth? And maybe more memories start to arise, and let them flow with no resistance. Who are you really? And if you were to look at yourself in the mirror during these moments, if you were to see your higher self, your true form, what would you see? What do you feel? Who are you really? This is your truth, and she will now lead the way into all the other energies and archetypes that are always available to you at your own call. We'll start with the protector, the archetype of the warrior. See your higher self embodied as that steadfast, headstrong, heart-strong warrior who is unafraid to go after what she really wants in this life. She knows what she believes in, and she fights for them with compassion. She fights for them in her own unique way, but cannot be swayed by others or the external. For when she knows her truth, she stays in it. Feel the energy that arises from being in the protector, the warrior. Where does it show up in your body? What do you look like as her? What action would you take? And how connected do you feel to this archetype? Take a big breath in and exhale. Now allow your higher self to show you the archetype of the mystic, the archetype of the healer, the knower, the wise woman. This blend of feminine qualities is the one that allows you to see beyond this moment. She sees past and she sees future. She knows even if she cannot see, or maybe she does see, her ability to feel beyond the veil come to her in different ways. She trusts her intuition. She trusts the knowledge and the intuition that comes through, and she shares it with the world. She understands that there is something so much greater than what our direct senses tell us. And she trusts in the ethereal. She trusts in her wisdom. Breathe into the wise woman, the mystic, the healer. See yourself as her. How connected do you feel to this part of yourself that knows that she knows? What does it feel like in your body? And if you brought this into your day to day, what would change? Breathe in. Exhale. Now allow your higher self to bring you into the archetype of the wild woman. The wild woman is you uninhibited. You being bold, trusting in your primal urges, in your desires. And this is the part of you that runs naked in the woods, dances in the rain, that goes after what she wants and is so free, so limitless, that she can't help but be seen, or maybe even told to stop, but she doesn't, because she knows that her power is in her freedom. It's in her wildness. And nothing can take that away from her. So as you see yourself as the wild woman, howling at the moon, what do you feel in your body? How connected are you to her? What would your life look like if you allowed more of this part of your essential self into your day to day? Take a big breath in and exhale. Now allow your higher self to take you to one last archetype for today. And this archetype is of the muse. The muse is the artist. She's the leading role of her own life. She knows that she is the creator of her reality. And she is so inspired by herself and her truth that she radiates, that she is magnetic for anyone that witnesses her. It's in how she dresses. It's in how she talks or walks. She is unafraid to show how brilliant, artistic, and even dramatic she is. Because the world is truly her stage, and she understands the power of impression. She understands the power of sending her message out to the masses, whatever that is, and doing it in a way that is so pure, authentic, and of deep impact. She glows because of her inner connection to her true self and her outer expression for the world to see. Breathe into the muse. How connected do you feel with this archetype? Where do you feel her in your body? And what would it be to share this part of yourself with your world? Take a big breath in. Exhale. Coming back into the body, back into the heart, and just noticing any sensations that are lingering. Connecting deep with who we really are, knowing that any traits we just tapped into, or any of the further archetypes, are always available to you once you allow them. That is all it takes. So in this moment, give yourself full permission to allow the energy, the archetype that is most seeking to be embodied by you right here and now. Take another big breath in. Feel the heart. And as you exhale, let the body soften. Let it land back to this moment. And trust, just through this experience alone, something has been revealed, and it will be carried out with ease. When you're ready, open your eyes. And take a moment to maybe journal, or just speak out loud the archetype that most interests you, and the one that most, I want to say, almost pulled or pushed towards you. Might be a different sensation. So I'd love to hear, Joni, what you feel or felt.
Well, it was very powerful. And I noticed how some of the archetypes felt more connected to upper chakras for me. For example, the mystic and also the muse. I could feel just the difference in the sensation, and the warrior was almost like a star pose, that like the yoga funnel pose, where I could feel both strong base and also kind of strong upward. And the wild woman was very much connected to the earth for me, and, kind of in the lower chakras. And the two that felt called to, it wasn't just one, it was the two of them. The warrior and the wild woman were the ones that wanted to be more present in this moment, and I would say in my life. And the thing that struck me about the warrior in particular that you shared, because initially you talked about, excuse me, the protector. And so I've always associated the protector with that idea of kind of creating boundary, or we'll say safeguarding what I possess, meaning as in my person, my being, my field. But the part that you mentioned was about really going out and moving out after what it is that you desire, that your heart's desires. And so that was a new element for me of the warrior, that she's not just about kind of protecting or safeguarding, but also about initiating and going out, which is, which is an area that is like a divine edge for me that I'm working with. So it was very powerful.
And I love that insight on the warrior and protector, because when I blended them, I wasn't sure for a long time, but what came to me was part of the feminine essence is what is ours can never be taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
And the protector to me is she knows that.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that. And so she is willing to just be the warrior and bring that out to the world, because no one can actually take that from her. It's like she does protect your heart. She does set those boundaries that are so necessary. And it seems so entangled with that action of sharing that message.
Yes.
Of helping others in some way. So I love that. It's so beautiful to hear your experience of that, and almost to witness how you've, just from our time spent together, how you do that.
Thank you. Yeah. And that has certainly been my growth of moving from a more, we'll say, disempowered feminine state to that more embodied, empowered warrior and wild woman.
Yes. I'm curious what allowed you to re-empower yourself, if that's the word. Like, what was the shift that took you from feeling that disempowerment that I know I've felt, and what allowed you to, do the shift where it's yours and now you do carry it out?
Well, I have shared before that really what awakened me in that regard was the birth of my daughter. And having a daughter initiated so many things around the feminine for me, and around recognizing a legacy of disempowerment in my mother line, and knowing that I wanted to foster something different for her, which of course we can only do when we are embodying that for ourselves. So that was the huge impetus. And being that my daughter is a very dynamic and potent and powerful force, and always has been, to really be able to meet her as a mother has required me bringing my full presence. So she's been a teacher for me for a long time in that way.
Because it does, and I'm curious if it's through your teachings or her personality, to be a warrior and to almost touch on movements that we've seen still quite recently with the Me Too movement, things like that. What I find, and through my own struggles of whether it was through sexual harassment or like my experience and the clients I've worked with, there's something about realizing that I was always safe even then, that truly no one actually took that from me, even though it very much felt like that. It got covered up, it got repressed. However, that inner protector, again, like what's mine can never be taken, became such a powerful mantra that allowed me to be a warrior, not where I'm trying to get back from others, but where I'm so full that I can spread this message with the intention of sharing that reminder with other women. Like, we are full inside. We have everything we need inside. No one took it from you. No one can ever take it from you. But we need these reminders to reawaken this part.
Yes, because it can be so easy to identify with the illusion. And when we have experienced real physical harm or psychological harm or psychic harm, that healing, those layers that are experiencing the pain and the suffering of that are real. And yes, the deeper truth, the deepest truth is it hasn't been taken from us. And so it's that working through those layers and having people like you, and I would say people like me, who are helping to hold that awareness that the deepest truth is that it wasn't taken, and that potency and that power has been there all along.
Can I ask how your daughter maybe displays that from your teachings?
Well, I had not anticipated this, Katie.
I can't help myself. But like you said, there was a break in the mother line. I'm so curious because there's something that's just so beautiful and potent to me that it is shifting.
Right. So I will say that I can share a piece, but of course her story is her story, and she's still in her formative years. But there is a way that, for lack of a better word, she was born like full guns a-blazing. She just has a very big energy and potency. And through her experience of me and my work and my teachings, there are pieces she's still working out karmically. And she has, if we're going to say, that sense of empowerment, hers is where mine was all felt pretty buried and covered over with maybe just a small bit showing through. Hers is almost like the opposite, where most of it is showing through, and there's still some that's obscured that she's working with. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I would.
It's a beautiful shift, and I think as someone that watches this a lot, and from my own experience with my mother and what I've been taught versus our lineage, the shift that can almost be so dramatic in one lifetime. Mm-hmm. I really like to believe it's available for anyone, no matter what part of life they're in.
Absolutely.
But I love that reminder of how it is shifting, that power that's coming out because of just past generations and the work that's being done right now.
Yes. And of course, I will say, as a mother, and I suspect is true for any other mothers listening, we always would love to just shortcut the process for our kids and give them the opportunity to not have to face the challenges or the intensity or the karmic lessons. But of course, that's what we're all here to do. So it doesn't work that way. And there's our growth, and they get the benefit of our growth, and they also get the benefit of our blind spots and our repressed places and distortions, and that is spurring their own growth. Is certainly how it feels from the inside to me, as someone who's still very much, in the day-to-day walking through process of it.
Yeah. And I would say like that, the iconic archetypes, the reason I think they resonate so well with myself and my clients, just the way movies or books or characters do, is when we can see the embodiment of these qualities and we can relate. We can see, okay, this, if it is a real person, right, or a goddess, and we can say, this is how it was done, or we have a mother or a guide in any sense where we can see it being lived in life. That to me has been my shortcut, if that makes sense. Once I discovered the feminine qualities, there were still a lot of trials and tribulations, but at least now I had more of a roadmap. At least now I saw how it was done, which was such a guiding force, because before I had any idea what the feminine qualities were, I completely rejected the feminine. And I was that guns a-blazing type person, but I was so in the masculine. And I was so out and so unfulfilled. And I had no awareness around this life force that was just completely cut out of my life just because I didn't know.
Yes. So how did that shift occur? Can you tell us about that?
The shift occurred, well, I got my heart broken. I think that's the best way to put it. I got my heart broken in a way. My heart broke from being in a relationship with a partner, with a job, with what I thought would make me so happy. And because I was so in the masculine, I was so focused on externals and disconnected from God, disconnected from my spirit. I was walking around really as like a shell of myself is how I used to put it. The shell of myself. And I didn't realize that until the partner left me and I quit my job and I had to start back at this foundation where it felt like nothing. And I was so exhausted from the work I'd done in my corporate job. I was so exhausted from giving my all to this partner, yet really also being the cause of why I didn't work, that I was left with having to face myself in a very real way, in a lot of emotional trauma that had been hidden for years. And for about 2 years, I found myself in a state of grace and deep sorrow, where I was praying, I was meditating, I was doing yoga. I went back to a lot of practices that I did when I was really little and I was going through some traumatic events. I went back to things I used to know, and I came back to my connection with God or with a higher force. And I think the biggest shift that the feminine brought me, and I didn't know it was the feminine at the time, was just this ultimate surrender to be with everything that was coming up, the sadness, the tears, because it was tears from that relationship and from things that had happened to me when I was 3 years old and 4 years old. And it just kept going and going and going. And I cried for myself. I think I cried for my family and so many other things. And when I allowed that to flow and I surrendered, I reconnected to my higher self. And that's why the higher self became and is such, like you said, a hallmark of what I teach. I came back to that inner knowing and that intuition and that voice that used to lead everything. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. I do actually know. And it's always been here. And there was that moment of just really committing and vowing to my soul, I would never lose that voice again. I would never go against it. And wherever it took me, I was willing to follow.
So it sounds like quite an awakening, a feminine awakening that you had. Those are the words that I would use. I don't know if they ring true for you, but
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And I know that you have a program, a higher self discovery program. I would love for you to just name that, because I know it's relatively new and it's such, as you said, a hallmark of your work and an important underpinning of this whole piece, whether you want to call it being iconic or the idea of sovereignty or leadership, our higher self is such a key aspect.
Yes. So I would say the higher self and the course I've put together is actually the foundational element. It's the one thing I have all my clients focus on first before we even talk about being iconic. And the way I designed this course was these are all the practices that I've done myself and I do with my clients that allow anyone to tap into who they really are, tap into their gifts, tap into that inner knowing. I mean, the truth is, and what I believe about anyone I work with, is that no one knows better what they need for their life better than they do. They just have to listen again to that true voice, not the voice of fear, not the voice of doubt or judgment, but that still voice within. However, with the higher self, everyone's higher self looks completely different. It's so unique. It is so with personality. It's not all love and light. The higher self can be with anger or sorrow, or it has a personality that's unique to each person. And through this course, I want someone to discover, yes, who they really are, how to tap into that part so they can make decisions, they can build a life around their truth. And that's, to me, the only way to really find fulfillment, to find purpose, to find happiness, and to be lit up every single day. And the 4 weeks is all about who is your higher self? What are the non-negotiables in your life? How do you attract what you want into your life through using this? How do you really connect with that part of yourself that is limitless? That is, I call it real life magic. Like, it's very much real. And many times it feels like magic. It's like, what? Because that's the part it's when we get out of the brain and into the heart and into the higher self, the universe is just conspiring. Like, this is that part of you that is always on that leading edge. This is the part of you that is always blissed out and in ecstasy. The best way, another quick tool, is with the higher self. Anytime you don't feel something feels off, like something just feels off, even anger or sorrow or sadness, there's just a gap between who you really are and your higher self. And there's nothing wrong with that emotion, but that's like your internal compass being like, you're thinking a thought that is off from who you really are. Come back to your source, come back to where all the energy is. And you realign to the higher self. And that 5th week that I added to the course, that's where it's all about sharing this with the world. That's the iconic piece. To me, someone who is iconic is they're in their higher self, they're embodying their higher self, and they're just sharing it with the world radically, all the time, relentlessly.
So now women can access that program without necessarily going through the whole coaching process with you. I know you do individual coaching work as well as group coaching, but that this is a new piece that you're offering that's a shorter duration or lower investment, which is a way to kind of access your work and to check out maybe if the next steps are right for them.
Exactly. Yep. So this course, it is something that they can do on their own time. I've set it up as a month long. There's that 5th additional week, but it's a month long with a daily meditation, a daily exercise. So there is a piece of consistency that's so important to me. And for all of my clients that have done this course, it's when we do it daily, it's incredible, that compounding that happens. And then all of a sudden they're just in their higher self. They're not even thinking about it anymore. And everything's coming easier. And that's why I set it up that way. However, I'm really open to how everyone learns and how everyone integrates. So it's set up in a way that each person can do it how they want to. And they will absolutely get the results they're seeking, because the higher self is dying to come out in every moment. I notice that with every client. It's just like this part of them is like, listen to me, let me show you the way. And there's such relief and ecstasy that comes when we just listen. And it can be easy. That's part of that feminine. It can be easy. And just one additional piece is for people that do like accountability and support. There is a group coaching program that goes with it, where basically anytime you start the course, you can join one of my group coaching. Because for me, the feminine, we need community. It's so much better when we go at it together. So I lead what's called a women's kula, where we do online, like we're all on Zoom with our videos on. And it's very informal. We just talk about what's coming up, how the course is going or how life is going. And there's some coaching, but it's a lot of just raw, real, transformative discussion. And that will be available to anyone that's interested as well, because that's just ultimately so important to me, that there's always that added support from the community, from like minds.
So tell me what the word kula means. It's Kula.
Yes. So it's a Sanskrit word that means a community, intentional community is how I've seen it. A Sanskrit word, there's like a million different definitions. But to me, what I really make it is it's a community. It's a group of individuals that are willing to meet each other at a soul-to-soul level. We're going to see each other at our higher selves. We're calling each other forth to our best selves. And there's so much sweetness and love and compassion. It's like, how do you really want to treat others? This is the place to do that. And there's none of that toxicity that can come in group norms. Like there's no drama, there's no gossip, it's just pure, raw, vulnerable discussion. And these women, a lot of the comments have been, they don't even know each other, but they know each other on that soul to soul level. And it's just profound how we connect so quickly when we just go there, when there's no barricades, there's no fronts. And that's the place for this.
Well, I love that you have that component in there as well. So we're getting to the point we need to start to wrap things up. And I would love to ask you a question that I ask all my guests, which is from your place of wisdom and who you are today, what you would tell your younger self.
So the answer that just came is I'll keep it brief, but the story really wants to come through. When I was about 5, I remember I was going through a very hard time. A lot of changes were being made. And, at the time, the biggest one was my dog had died. My parents were getting divorced. My papa died. Like all these first times I'm experiencing death and changes. And I can hear my parents fighting downstairs, and I'm upstairs in my bedroom, just crying. And it was the first time that I recall hearing my higher self so clearly. It was just this guiding voice that sounded like an older version of myself. Like I remember recognizing that. Like I think this is me when I'm older. And I remember just these words being like, this is shaping you. This is shaping you to change the world. Like it's going to be okay. This is shaping you. And that message has just stayed with me ever since. Stuff like when there is hardship, I trust that it's happening for me and for the world.
That's very potent and beautiful. And yes, it's like the lightning rod that connects back to that piece about nothing can be taken from us. That is essentially ours. So I want to again underscore that you have this beautiful free offer that you've provided in terms of this archetype meditation, which I know women can access, I'm assuming on your website.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And your website, for those that would like to access that, is theiconiccoach.com. And it will be in the description section as well. And I know that you also offer one-on-one, like a free one-on-one opportunity to do a phone call either with you or with one of your colleagues. Is that true? Is that accurate?
That is, yes.
Good. So they could check out that there as well. Anything else that I've missed or that would be important to add?
The only other thing is if anyone is interested in the Higher Self Intensive, so that's the month-long course.
Yes.
That will be available as well on the website. And so the archetypes from basically the archetypes is coming free, like as a gift with that course. However, for listening, and if you're interested in just the archetypes, they can send me an email. Does that work? Because I have it set up.
Yes, absolutely. So they should access you through the contact area of the website to send you an email?
Yep, that's perfect. Yeah, because the two go very well together. The archetypes and higher self, it's all very much intermingled. So
yeah, so it sounds like you have a lot integrated to really be a great resource and support.
Thank you. I try. I definitely try.
Yes. So I'm really grateful that you were able to come and be with us today, Katie, and to impromptu take us through that meditation process. It was very powerful.
Thank you so much for having me, Joni. This was just sublime. I think I've had goosebumps the whole time. So just thank you.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. And I love sharing. I just love sharing your wisdom and your higher self with our listeners and the women of the world. It's one of my great passions, is really sharing the various versions and flavors of women's higher selves on the show. So such a delight to have you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I want to thank you, our dear listeners, for being with us today. And to remind you, as always, to always trust what your heart knows.
Thanks for listening to Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow with Joni Advent Maher. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share our podcast with a friend and subscribe, rate, and review our podcast at iTunes.